this going here. Okay, there we go. What is this? No, I don't want that.
I have a question when you can.
Sure. Okay, right, yeah, go ahead. Well, go ahead with your question.
When I first got the iPad, I was texting, it just started, and I was so disappointed because iPad was clicky. I call it clicky. If you didn't have that system, is it called an iOS system?
Right.
Well, you couldn't text that person. And they said, oh, yes, you can. And even some of the texts I called at Apple, oh, yes, you can. And they figured out, no, you can't. So I found something and downloaded some app, and I was able to do it with a different phone number that they assigned me. But still to this day, you can't.
Let's talk about it, and we'll see if we can solve the problem. But more important is I want you to be able to get to the point where you can figure it out yourself, right? You understand enough of it. In other words, if I was teaching you to drive a car, I can't teach you every possible place in Atlanta. There's too many. But if I teach you how to turn the wheel and, you know, stop and brake and accelerate and all that kind of stuff, then you'll find out yourself how to get to the supermarket and whatever. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to not go too deeply in because we're not going to get too technical. We're going to spend enough time to sort of understand what this thing is, whether it's a phone or an iPad. So I have my iPad right here, ready to go if we need it. And, you know, ask any questions that might come up, you know, based on your experience.
All right.
So here we go. Okay, so introduction. Okay, that's me. I'm Jeff Kalvaruski. Those who know me from the Benson days, do a whole lot of classes. Now we're doing like 2 a week online, but we used to have 2 or 3 a week in-person, longer classes than what we've got here. If you require a copy of the slides, if you want a copy of these slides, exactly what we're seeing, I'm happy to send it to you. Just send me an email at this address here. And if you want to write it down, if you send me an email to this one at the bottom of the screen, here it is. Just mention the iPhone, iPad class, and I will be sure to send you back a copy. Yeah, between my first name and last name, there's an underscore, right? Not a dash, but the underscore. I don't know how I got that, but I've had it now for so many years. I'm kind of stuck with it. So it's Jeff _Kalvaruski at earthlink.net, not .com, but .net. Okay, and just send me an email, say, I'm in the iPhone, iPad class, and please send me a copy of the slides, and I'll be most happy to do that.
Thank you.
Right. Okay. Hi, Gloria. Welcome to the class. You're muted. You're on mute.
Yes.
There we go. That's better. Right.
Hi, Gloria.
Hi.
Okay, let's go. So I don't know if you heard that, Gloria, but if you see where I've under my cursor's going, if you just send me an email at that email address, Jeff _Kalvaruski at earthlink.net, I'll mention this class, iPhone, iPad class, and I'll send you a copy of the very slides that you're looking at right now.
Oh, okay.
And then you can use them for notes and refresh your memory in the future and so on. So here we go. In this class, we're going to learn a bunch of trips and ticks, what they call tips and tricks, ideas, good ideas to familiarize you with your device. So as I just said to Sharon a few minutes ago, we're not going to go into every possible thing that you can do with your iPhone or your iPad. There's too much, but we learn about it, you know, what it is, how it works, and then you should have enough knowledge to be able to try things yourself. So that'll be the most important thing is, aha, I got the basic idea now, like you've learned to drive the car. Well, now you can drive yourself, you know, to Benson Center or to Publix or whatever it is that you want, once you know the basics of how the thing works. And actually we'll find that the iPhone and the iPad are very easy to work with. They're designed to be very, very, very simple, but you've got to have the basic idea, right? Same with a car. If you get into a car, you've never seen a car before, you won't have any idea what those pedals are, right? And once somebody tells you this one is the gas and this one is the brake and so on, then it becomes fairly simple. Okay, so we're going to start right at the beginning with Apple iOS. Well, first of all, up here in the top left corner, that's the Apple logo. It's either in multiple colors like that, or on actual Apple devices now, it's white. So Apple changed it to white. But it used to be this kind of colorful, green, yellow, orange, red, mauve, blue sort of thing. But that's the Apple logo, an apple with a bite taken out of it. And the name Apple actually is interesting. Where did it come from? Well, when the two Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak, started building the first, personal computer back in the 1970s, they were working literally in a garage in California, in what is today Silicon Valley, and across that was long before Silicon Valley was Silicon Valley, and across the road from them was farmland, and there was an apple orchard. So they decided, we'll call our company Apple, and the rest is history. It's now one of the most valuable companies in the world. So let's talk about what is Apple iOS, and what is an iPhone, what is an iPad, what's the difference between them, and then we'll start with some of the basic features of the device. So firstly, what is Apple iOS? So you'll usually see this. So here's the more usual icon or picture for Apple, the white or silvery white apple with a bite out of it. And then they usually call, you'll see something like this, small I, capital OS. So what does that mean? So every mobile device, whether it's a smartphone or a tablet, needs some basic software to make the device work. It's kind of like the engine of a car. If I give you a free Mercedes Benz, you say, oh, that's great. Jeff's giving me a free car, but it doesn't have an engine in. It ain't going to be much use to you, right? It ain't going to do anything. It's not going to move. It needs the power plant. It needs the soul, you might say. The car is just the body, but it needs a soul, just like a human being. We have a body, it doesn't do anything. When it's got a soul in it or a spirit, then it works, and it can think and talk and so on. So this basic software, this initial software, is what makes the machine, the computer, the app, the phone or the tablet run. And this software they call the operating system, or the OS. That's a very old term. It comes from IBM in the 1960s. And the big mainframes that took up the whole room, they had an operating system. And for some or other, this old term has survived into the world of iPads and iPhones and Windows computers and Mac computers and so on. But OS just simply means the operating system. The piece of software is just a very big and very complicated app that runs the computer. So without OS, without iOS, your iPad is just a paperweight, right? It lies on the table and doesn't do anything. Or your phone is just a paperweight. Doesn't make calls, can't do anything. But the OS, which is the soul of the device, not only makes it run, but it gives the device what we call its unique look and feel. So when you see an Apple phone, whether it's your phone or my phone, or you see an Apple iPad, whether it's yours or someone else's, and you turn it on, it always looks the same, right? All the apps that run on it look the same. It works in the same way. It's very much, again, like motor cars. In the early days, every kind of computer and program were different. And so every time you bought a new computer or a new phone or whatever, you had to learn all over again. We start all over again. Finally, when Apple came out with this idea, with this pictures on the screen, which we know and we'll talk about in a moment, that was called the standard look and feel. They all look the same, right? And they operate the same. So if you know how to use your phone, you know how to use your iPad. If you know how to use your iPad, you know how to use your iPhone. They are virtually the same. Underneath, in the electronics, they're pretty different, right? Same as a Mercedes-Benz car, in the engine is not the same as a Chevy or a Ford. But as far as I'm concerned, I just drive my car. I'm not an engineer. When I get in, it's pretty much the same. The right pedal is the accelerator, the left pedal is the brake. The gears are the same, reverse and forward and drive and all that good stuff. The lights are more or less in the same place, but I don't care actually what's under the hood. Same here. So iOS, although you very seldom talk to iOS, it's there all the time, and it's protecting you. It's giving you safety. It has security built in so that bad guys can't get into your phone or into your iPad. It provides a lot of security, and it ensures that all programs adhere to the same standards, that they look the same. So nobody can write a program or an app today for your Apple device, for your phone or your iPad, that looks different, right? That the Apple won't allow that. Everything has got to fit into this same look and feel. So you have the same buttons in roughly the same places, and the same user actions to get a consistent experience. You do the same thing, you press the buttons and so forth in the same way. Okay, and so all of the operating systems, whether it's on the iPad or the phone, is called iOS. And like it says down here at the bottom, when you know how to use iOS, you can use any iPhone or iPad. It doesn't matter which one. And that will be true into the future as well. So now we're on to this is actually out of date. It says cousin version 11. Apple has just come out with version 12. So irrespective of how these versions are going, iOS is always going to work the same. You very seldom talk to it. It's just kind of like somebody sitting in the background and helping you out. It's like your helper. You don't need to know it's there. It always works. There are a few times that you will talk or communicate with the operating system, and we'll talk about that later on as well. So the question then is, what is an iPhone or iPad? Well, firstly, each is a very powerful computer that happens to fit in a purse or a pocket. So we call this an iPad, but actually it's an incredibly powerful computer put into a very small body. I mean, it's almost nothing. You can see it's tiny, and your phone is even smaller. Your phone will fit into your pocket. This won't fit in your pocket, the iPad, but it will certainly fit in your purse. It's much more powerful and more capable than the mainframe computers of the 70s and 80s. So the first computers I started on back in the Stone Ages took up a whole room. It really did. And it had 3 or 4 people full time to run the thing, right? And yet, and the first computer I worked on was owned by a very large corporation. It cost millions of dollars, right? And it needed 3 trained people to run it, 3 or 4, I think, right? Today, you can now buy an iPhone, from AT&T or Verizon or any of these guys. You can get your iPhone. It costs you, a few dollars a month, $20, $30 a month, which is a lot in itself. But compared to the millions of dollars that we needed in the old days for computers, which were not as powerful. So it's as if you could now buy a fancy car. You could buy a Ferrari that can do hundreds of miles per hour, only needs gas once a month, or maybe never needs gas, and it drives itself all for $500, right? Now, one of these days, we do already have cars that don't need gas, they're electric cars, and we have cars that can already almost drive themselves, like a Tesla, but they don't cost $500, they cost $70,000, right? So the way the price and the size of computers have come down is amazing. Amazing that you could buy what was a Ferrari in the old days is today costs, a few dollars a month. When the iPhone came out in 2007, that was Steve Jobs of Apple, the guy who ran Apple, his brilliant idea. It was the first smartphone, phone without a keypad. And I remember when it came out, and I looked and I said, are these guys crazy? Everybody remember the flip phones? You remember the old flip phone? It had a keyboard, right? It had a little teeny keyboard with numbers on it. And you can, 404, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You could press the buttons and dial a number. Which, in other words, the original phones, the flip phones, were really a smaller version of the phone that sat in your house. Remember with the push buttons? Who remembers the push button phones, right? It had the buttons on. The little flip phone was exactly the same thing. In other words, it was kind of like in the very early days of motor cars. The earliest motor cars looked like a horse and carriage. They were kind of square, and they looked like the old horse and carriage, except didn't have a horse in front. But gradually, cars have evolved away from that. Same here. When the iPhone came out, it said, we're changing that whole idea. We don't need a flip phone. We don't need a keypad. We are going to be able to do all of this stuff without any keys by pressing buttons. And that's what we're going to talk about in a moment. So I'll stop on that at this point. The iPad, which came out in 2010, so it's barely 10 years ago, is really an iPhone with a bigger screen. So when they came out with the iPad, so the iPhone itself was a brilliant idea. Oh, by the way, let me note, everything with Apple's got this little I in the front. So we had iOS, and we have iPhone, and we have iPad. I don't know what the little I stands for. Nobody's ever told me. Maybe it stands for internet. I don't know. But everything with Apple is an I. You think it'd be a little A for Apple, but it isn't. So the iPad came out, and it essentially was an iPhone with a bigger screen, right? Except originally, the iPad wasn't designed to make phone calls, right? But we'll talk about more of that later. And logically, it wasn't a phone in the early days because nobody, even at Apple, could imagine, trying to make a phone call with this thing. It would be kind of like, remember the old boom boxes? You'd have to be carrying a boom box on your shoulder. So this wasn't a phone, right? It was purely a device for reading books, watching movies, and so forth, right? But even that changed later on, which we'll talk about. So the question I'm always asked is, I got a phone, I got a tablet, I got a laptop. What the heck is the difference, right? And Sharon, you asked that as well. Should I be using my iPad or should I be using my computer? And the answer is that they all do pretty much the same, right? It's like saying, what's the difference between a Chevy and a Ford? You love Chevys and I love Fords, but at the end of the day, is there any difference, right? They're pretty much the same. They've all got four wheels and they got a steering wheel and the brake and the accelerator in the same place, and you drive them pretty much the same, right? The differences are minor. This one's got a nicer radio in, and that one I like the shape better, or this one's got a color that I prefer that the other one doesn't have. But at the end of the day, they're pretty much the same. In fact, I call these the Starbucks difference. When you go to Starbucks and you order a coffee, what do you get? You can get small, medium, and large, right? Well, they call them venti and schmenti. I don't know, they got fancy names, but really it's small, medium, and large. But at the end of the day, when you buy your coffee, whether it's a small one, a medium one, or a large one, what's the difference in the coffee between the coffee in the small cup or the coffee in the large cup? In the large cup, there's no difference whatsoever. The product that you're buying, the coffee, is exactly the same. It's the cup that's different, right? So essentially, there's no difference. If you really think about it, the difference in price between a small coffee and a large coffee can sometimes be like $2, but the difference in the amount of coffee that they put in there is probably worth a penny, if that, right? It's just the cup that's bigger. And in a sense, that's exactly the same with these guys. So this one here is a phone. This one over here is an iPad or a tablet. This one here is a Mac computer. It's a mini computer, right? It could be a Windows computer as well. They're all pretty much the same, and they don't taste the same, but they all do pretty much the same stuff. And the good news is the way you operate them is getting similar, more and more similar. So there was a time, of course, when a phone like a flip phone, an old flip phone, had nothing to do whatsoever with a laptop computer. So in the days when I had a flip phone still, all those years ago, I had a laptop, I had a computer, but they were completely different things. Like having a car and having a boat, they're not the same at all, completely different things. Today, they've kind of come together, and we'll learn some of the differences, but by and large, when you can run one, you can use the other as well. So basically, I say you choose the device that best suits you, what you want to do with it, and your wallet, how much you want to spend. So if I mainly want to make phone calls, as we all want to do these days, I get a phone. If I don't make phone calls very much, I don't really need a phone. I don't need that. I could buy an iPad. So the iPhone's great for making calls, for sending text messages, playing games. The iPad is much bigger, and it's great for reading books, watching movies, and so forth, right? It's good for those kind of things. The laptop, here's the Mac on the right, or the Windows computer, is for productive work, for typing, doing Word documents, spreadsheets, and so on, right? The good news is, like I said, they all do pretty much the same thing, and even better news, they can all be synchronized with the same data, and that is really amazing. So, for example, on my iPad, I have an app called. Let me get the iPad started up. So I have an app here. You see it in the bottom right-hand corner down here where my finger is, and that's called Kindle. See the picture of a little guy reading a book? Can everybody see that? It's where my finger is in the bottom right-hand corner here, this one. And Kindle is an app for reading books, right? So it's a terrific app. So if I open Kindle and I start reading one of my books, I've got my own library on here now, which is great. So I don't have to carry books with me when I go on vacation, when we can go on vacation again. But if I close my iPad and then I go to my laptop, I've also got a Kindle app there. And when I start the Kindle app on my laptop, which is a completely different device, what happens? It opens to the same book at the very same page I was on my iPad, right? I don't even have to go look for that book or that page, which is kind of an amazing thing if you think about it. And we'll talk about how that works. The first thought one might have is that these devices are all talking to each other, but they're not. My iPad and my computer don't even know each other. They've never been introduced. And yet the computer says, oh, I know Jeff was on that book on page 47, in the middle of the page. It'll actually open up exactly there and I can carry on. And the same is true with photos that I take. I can keep on all my devices. I can see my photos on my phone, on my iPad, or on my laptop computer. I can keep all my phone, all my device, all my data synchronized together, which is an amazing thing. And we'll talk more about that in due course. Okay. So let's talk about it. What is an iPhone or an iPad? So we know what an iPhone looks like. There's one on the left, and there's the iPad, which is usually, of course, bigger than the iPhone on the right. And straight away, you can see that the look and feel of the two of them is very similar, right? They've both got a sort of a big button in the middle down at the bottom. This one's got it here. It's harder to see because it's in black. They've got a sort of a line of pictures at the bottom with a slightly different background color. Same here. And then a whole bunch of other pictures scattered around on the screen. So the question is, what are all these things and how do they differ? So let's start first of all with just the basics of the device itself. You probably know these things, but let's be sure we've got everything. So first of all, you have to power the device, right? So your iPhone or your iPad needs electrical power, right? And for that, we need two things. There's a cable that looks like this, like over here in the right-hand corner. And there's a plug that goes in with two pins on that goes into the electric power socket. Apple, as usual, likes to go their own way. So this cable here, which they call a lightning connector, really has nothing to do with lightning in the sky. It's just the name. Apple calls it the lightning connector. Is different to any other device. So all the other devices, and Android devices and Windows computers and so on, use a slightly different power connector, which means you can only get your power connector from Apple. And of course, at the same time, that means it's going to be more expensive, right? But it's called a lightning connector and it looks like this. And I just want to talk about it because this is also useful. It has two pieces. On the right here, you'll see like a rectangular connector, and on the, on the left side, and then on the right, there's a smaller one, right? Sort of with the little gold connectors there. So the smaller one on the right is the one that goes into your device. It always goes into the device. And on the iPad, for example, you can see there's a little hole at the bottom right there. It plugs in there, right in the center. And your phone will be exactly the same. It will have exactly the same little hole that'll take this, this rightmost connector here. This one, which is larger, is called a USB. And a USB stands for Universal Service Bus. Don't worry what that means. It means everything is connected today using one plug. There was a time on computers when you needed 4 or 5 different plugs. There was a different plug for the power, there was a different plug to plug in a screen, and there was a different plug to plug in a printer, and so on. They now all become the standard plug that looks like this. It's got a white base here. It's got this little metal section. And if you look inside it, looking from here, looking downwards from here, you'll see a little rectangular hole, quite narrow, maybe 1/4 of an inch wide, or less than 1/2 an inch wide. And that goes into in this case, goes into the power plug. So this power plug from Apple, it's got the 2 pins which go into the wall as usual, and Apple makes a very quality plug. So these 2 pins can flip down so they won't rip your bag or your clothes when you're carrying the thing with you, and they pop up. And on the side, it's over here on the right side, we can't see it in this diagram, there will be a hole that exactly fits this little rectangular USB. So we plug the USB into the plug, and we plug the other end of the USB, what's called the lightning section, that's the Apple Lightning, into our device, and it powers up. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to turn the device on. You don't have to turn the device off. It will power itself until it's full. Once it reaches 100% of power, it will stop, right? So you never have to worry about, by and large, I say, don't bother to turn your device off. Just leave it running. Your phone, there's no need to turn it off ever, turn off the power. Just leave it running. If you're not using it at night, then it will by itself go to sleep. But it's instantly available for you, so don't bother to turn it off. Same applies to a laptop as well, unless you're actually going to travel somewhere. Just leave it running all the time, okay? And so basically, an iPhone or an iPad, especially an iPad, can run for days on one charge. A phone usually doesn't go more than about a day. The iPad does, for the very simple reason the iPad's bigger, so it's got a bigger battery, right? Okay, let's talk about the device itself now. So the most important thing is the home screen. So this is where everything happens. The home screen is where the action happens, right? And the good news is we can always get back to this home screen. If you start using your device, your iPhone or your iPad, and I'm sure it's happened to everybody, you get lost. You don't know what you're doing anymore. Then the good news is there is a single button. It's the one down at the bottom, over here at the bottom of the device, which you can't see on this particular diagram. And if you press that button, you come home, right? You come back to this screen. So it's kind of like Dorothy and the Wizard of Oz. When she clicked her ruby slippers, she would go home to Kansas. And so you can always get home. Now, there are a number of things which we can see here. Firstly, we have the screen, right? So we don't have, as we know, we don't have a keyboard anymore, but we have the screen, and this is called a touch sensitive screen, right? And it's covered with little pictures. So Apple's brilliant idea back in 2007, so it's only 13, 14 years ago that this came out. Before that, we didn't have this, was to say, what we need is a device here that knows where my finger is. So when you hold your device, and you hold your finger close to the screen, not touching it, but just a tiny little bit away from the screen, the device can sense where your finger is, right? And it knows where your finger is. And the beauty of that is that Apple said, okay, right where I know where your finger is, say here, let's look down in the bottom left-hand corner, you've got this picture, which looks like a telephone, right? Like an old telephone. Remember the old phones that we used to hold like this next to our ear? That's what it looks like. If I then touch that gently, it will sense that I'm touching there and I'm not touching here or here or here or somewhere else, right? It's very clever in that it can sense where your finger is. And that allows us now to use these icons to get things done. And so the beauty is an icon, they call them an icon or an app. Each of these does one thing, not many things. So in the old days, computer programs used to be quite complicated and they would do many, many things, right? And you had to learn how to tell it what to do, right? The iPhone now or the iPad only does one simple thing, one function at a time. Each of these has one function and it does it very, very well indeed. So that's the good news. So if you want to click on in the top right-hand corner, you'll see we have a camera. If you want to click on that, you're now taking photographs, but you're not doing email. Here's the one on the top left that says email or mail. Notice again, both of those use icons from the old days. The email, the icon is an envelope, which is strange. We don't write letters anymore. The camera is an old camera, the one that we used to look in and click the button on the top. So it's rather funny. But if you press the camera, you take photographs. If you press the mail, you want to send an email. If you press the phone, you want to make a phone call, right? And each one will then react appropriately. Pressing the phone will bring up the on-screen keyboard, right, with the numbers on, and then you can press the appropriate numbers for the phone number. The camera, if that comes up, will allow you to point and aim the camera and press the button, which then takes the picture. So there's the camera icon, that one over there, and that will take a picture. Right. The other things that you need to know about your device is typically on the right side of your iPad, there will be a single switch which allows you, if you press it at the top, makes the volume louder, and if you press at the bottom, it makes the volume softer, right? So that's the volume switch, right? There's really not much else in the device. Either on the left side of the iPhone or on the top of the iPad, right on the top here, it's hard to see, there is another little button. You can touch it, and that's the power on off button. That will turn the device on or turn the device off. Like I said to you, don't bother to turn it on and off. Did somebody have a question?
Yes, please. Could you
Yeah.
let me in again? Because I have to get in the car and go to doctor, but I want to keep
Oh,
on with
sure,
myself.
sure. Sorry, I didn't see you. You were there. Okay, you're in.
Thank you.
Okay, sure. Right. Okay. So some of the phones or iPads, they have two buttons for the volume. One is for plus and one is for minus, louder or softer. My one is still an older one, which has got one button, and you press it on the one side, it goes louder. You press it on the other side, it gets softer, right? My iPad still has a little round hole, which you can see here in the device, where my finger is a little, there it is, little round hole. And that, it is where you could plug in an earphones, exactly like what I'm wearing at the moment. The newer iPhones and the newer iPads, they've done away with that, right? Because, that was too easy. So instead of a pair of earphones like this, which maybe cost $20, $30, if that, you can get them for $10, they replaced it with those earpods. They call them earpods, and you've probably seen people walking around with these little white things hanging out the ears. I always think that they're wearing earrings, but it's not. The earpods connect directly by wireless connection to the device, to the phone or the iPad, so that you can either hear the music or hear the movie, or you can hear what the other person's saying if you're making a phone call, right? Of course, the earpads don't cost $20 or $30. They cost $160 or $170, right? So Apple produces wonderful products. That really is a great idea, those earpads, but you're paying 5 times the price of what you used to do. And certainly for my purposes, this cable with the earphones in my ear, I'm not going to lose it because they tie together with a wire. With the two earpods, I know for sure if I buy them, one of them I'm going to lose, and then you've only got the left one and not the right one. And if I lose this, I'm only out $20. I can get a new one, or if I want a better quality, it's not much more. In addition, the phone, one of the great things that Apple came up with is to put a camera in. So as we can see you'll see it on the back of your phone. You can see in the back of my iPad. There's a camera facing away from me, and much harder to see, very small, you probably can barely see it over here, is a tiny little hole. So there's quite a big hole at the back, which is the camera going the other way, and a very small camera phone facing towards me. It was the first time anybody thought of having 2 cameras in a device. Okay, and so why do we need 2 cameras? Anybody? Why is one not enough? Why 2 cameras? Well, it created a whole new industry. The one facing towards me is for taking selfies, taking a photograph of yourself, right? So if you remember in the old days when we had a camera like this that you had to hold up to your eye and press the button, you could take a picture of anything But there's one thing you couldn't easily take a picture of, and that was you, right? Some cameras had a little button you could press, and then it would go brrr for 10 seconds, and then it would take the picture. So you could put it down, press the little button, and then you could run and stand next to your family or your friends, and you could be in the picture. But then you couldn't take another one until you'd press the button again, right? So that was pretty rough, and it was almost impossible to turn the camera around and take a picture of yourself. By putting in the second camera, the one facing in, the kids today can't live without taking selfies. That's what they all do, right? It's all the time they're taking selfies of themselves and with their friends, and look at the cool new dress I'm wearing, and all this kind of stuff. This is what they love. Okay, so getting back to really the important stuff. So at the bottom of the screen right here, it's hard to see because it's on a black color. You can see it's sort of shining. There's a little button there. That's the home button that I mentioned earlier. So you press this button, and that takes you back to the home screen. So whatever I'm doing, if I use my device, I go to Kindle. I'm now at the Kindle, right? The Kindle app, right? But now I decide, okay, I don't know what I'm doing anymore, or I want to go. So Kindle has opened up. If I just press the home button, bingo, and I'm back at the home screen, right? You see that? See, instantly, as soon as I press this button, it went back to the home screen. Now, in the older devices, the button at the bottom was an actual button, physical button. The newer phones and iPads, it's a virtual button. In other words, it's like a little picture on the screen there, and you touch it, and it works in exactly the same way. So that's your home button. So let's look at the device a little bit more. Okay, so here again on my iPad, here's the front camera. You can see it's very, very small, quite hard to see. That's the camera facing towards you. When you use the camera app, it will have a capability. There'll be one little button in the camera app to switch the camera from outward to inward and back again. So you can take photos of yourself all day, and you can take photos of other things all day, and you can swap between them. This is the famous touch screen. Here it is. This whole thing is this touch screen. So the important thing here is it's very hard glass. It doesn't break easily. You've got to pretty much step on it to break the glass. It's very, very strong glass. It's called Gorilla Glass that they came up with. And right behind the glass are little electronic circuits which can sense where your finger is. Okay, there's the home screen. And then this bar here, you'll notice that these 4 icons, little pictures, are on a slightly different background. And that's called your favorites bar. Those are the apps that you use the most. What's also interesting is that the device you have has more than one screen, right? So although you can only see one screen there, there's actually another screen available. You can imagine it's to the right, and another one to the right of that. And the way we get to that screen is we just put our finger on the screen, and we swipe to the left. We drag it across to the left, and a whole new screen will open up. So you've got my iPad here like this, right? And I just swap to the left. You'll see a whole lot of new icons open up, right? And there's a second one, and then there's even a third one, right? And to get back, you just flip your finger the other way. And I get back to my original home. Or if I'm over here and I can't remember how to get back, just press the home button, and I'm back at Dorothy is back in Kansas, from the movie Wizard of Oz. Okay, got icons here in rows. This is like, sorry, somebody say something?
I was laughing at the Wizard of Oz joke.
At the Wizard of Oz, yeah. Remember what happened when Dorothy clicked her ruby slippers? She went home to Aunt Em back in, was it Kansas? Yeah, Kansas, right?
Yeah.
So this is your ruby slippers button. So the point I always emphasize this. People say I'm scared to do stuff because I get lost and I don't know where I am and I can't get out. Well, the beauty of your iPhone, your iPad is you can always get back to this home screen. Doesn't matter where you were. So that would be a very useful thing in life, right? If you could always get back and get started again. You start doing something and you make a mess. You start baking a cake and it's a big mess. It would be nice if you just press a button and go back to the beginning and start all over again. Life isn't like that. but your phone and your iPad are in fact like that. So there are a couple of things you can do on the screen. You again probably know all of this stuff, but I want to do all the basics, and then next week we'll start with more advanced stuff. So first of all, we can touch the screen. So if we touch one of those little pictures with this finger, any finger, touch the picture, you just tap it gently, just don't hold it down, just tap it, instantly it happens. And that is such a clever idea that 2-year-old children can do it, right? My 2-year-old granddaughter already knows how to play with her mom's iPhone. And in fact, she knows the icon for the phone, and she touches that, and she knows that my number's right at the top. So she touches that as well, and suddenly the phone rings, and when I answer it, she can't speak yet, but she knows how to make a phone call with an iPhone. And if you think about it, that's amazing, isn't it? Right? I mean, when you were 2 years old, you couldn't drive a car, but 2 and 3-year-olds today can use an iPhone or an iPad, which is really astonishing. Because when I started in computers, to be a computer person, you needed a degree in computer science, right? You had to been taught this stuff by really smart people. It was hard. It was difficult. Today, it's gone to that. It's as simple as that. Little people can do it very, very easily. So that's called a tap. If you do hold it down, if you point at an icon and you hold it for a couple of seconds, so you point at it, you touch the screen, and you hold it down just for 2 or 3 seconds, that's called a long press, right? And that will allow you to move the icons around. So you'll find, you need to try that yourself. But if you put your finger on, say, this icon over here, the one with the clock on that I'm pointing at, and you hold it down and you just drag it down to here, the icon will move. So you can arrange the screen any way you like. You can arrange the apps by alphabetically. You can arrange them by color or any way you like. Right? You can have all the games in one place and all the emails and other stuff in a different place, whatever you like. So, for example, if I decide here on the bottom favorites line, I've got this music icon, which will play music, and I decide I don't want that there anymore. I'd rather have the calendar. You see the calendar up at the top with the number 9 on? That's the calendar. So all I have to do is hold this music one down, hold it for a few seconds, and drag it to an empty spot on the screen, say here. And then I go to the calendar, hold it down, and drag it down to there, and everything will be fine, right? If you drag this icon, say, to this point here, you drag it onto the second line, it will just put it into this icon's place, and it'll move everything down. So you don't even have to move stuff around, right? You can just move it into, you can point it into this gap, and it'll put it into the appropriate slot, and if necessary, it'll move everything on. So it's very, very useful, very user-friendly indeed. Okay. Any questions on that? You can also swipe, as I said. So the swipe says you put your finger in a spot and you move quickly to the left or to the right. So you can swipe left or you can swipe right. You can also swipe down and up, but I won't bother about those at the moment. The most important one is to swipe left, which allows you to see the second screen, right? So that second screen, as I just showed you, is there, right? There's my iPad. There's another screen, and I get to it just by doing that. And you can see a whole lot of new icons pops up. And then to go back, I just go back the other way, or I can press the home button, right? So what do you put on the second screen? Well, if you've got a lot of apps, you've got more apps than you need, I put the ones on the second screen that I don't use all the time, right? The ones that I use from, once a week or twice a week. The ones I use every day, like email and calendar and camera and so on, I put on the front screen. But you can arrange it any way you like. One other useful thing, I think I've got something about it later on, but I'll tell you about it right now. If you've got you're getting a bit crowded here, right? You're getting a bit crowded. There's only so much space to put your icons, and it's getting a bit crowded. You may want to put the icons that are the same thing together, right? Into one box. So for example, let's say you have a bunch of games. You have 2 or 3 games. You have solitaire and poker and chess or whatever. You've got games that you like to play. Candy Crush, all these games that people play. And let's say that the icons are right here. 1, 2, 3, 4. and they're taking up a whole row of those games. If you take any one of the icons and drag it on top of another one, you actually drag the icon with your finger and put it on top of one of the others, it'll turn it into a little container, like a file folder.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can take let's say you got 4 of them, you can drag 3 of them onto one. It doesn't matter which one. And that one will now become like a little, you'll see that there are teeny weeny little icons inside. And so now all your games are in one icon, which you can call games. So when you touch that one, the little folder will open up and it shows, oh, I got Candy Crush and Solitaire and whatever, right? So that's a useful trick to save yourself space. I put common things in one place, right? So if you have games, you have more than one email, right? I have more than one email. I have my Earthlink email. I also have my Gmail email. Instead of having 2 icons, I just put them one on top of the other, and it's in one container.
Is there, excuse me, is there any time that those little, the little block that have 3 or 4 things in it, is there any time that it'll automatically do that without you having to put one on top of the other one?
No, you got to do it because it doesn't know which ones you want to put in there, right? So you got to do it, right? Apple doesn't know that you want all your games together, right? And it doesn't have to be the same thing. Games, you can put anything you like into one little box, right? It doesn't really matter, okay? Mostly you do.
I've seen that before on my tablet, but my grandson was helping me set it up, so he probably put it together like that because I've seen that.
Oh yeah, he probably did it for you.
Did that.
He probably did. Yeah, the machine won't do it itself, right?
Okay.
And if you change your mind, let's say I put 4 games in, and then accidentally I put the calendar in there too, or the email in there, and say, oh God, I don't want to do that, right? Then you open up the container by touching it, you point at the icon for the email, and you drag it out. If you drag it out, you go back onto the main screen, right? So you can create them or you can undo them. And then there are the 2 important things that you can do. You can pinch, right? So pinch, you put 2 fingers on the screen like this, right? And you drag them together like you pinching something, right? With your forefinger and your thumb, and that makes the screen smaller, right? So if you're looking at a photograph, you can make it smaller. Spread is the opposite of pinch. So put 2 fingers like this together, like that, first finger and thumb, and open it out. When you do that, it makes it bigger. So that's a very useful thing. I'll mention this later, but I'll tell you right now, a very useful trick. So who's got medication containers? You've got medication you take. They're pretty small, aren't they? Right? And it's very hard to read what's on that stupid label because it's so tiny. Here's a trick. Open the camera. See the camera icon here in the top right hand corner? Open the camera. Focus it on your pill box or your pill thing. And then just go like that. And it gets bigger and you can read it. Isn't that cool? Or there's, sometimes you're reading a magazine or a newspaper and there's a photograph. And then under the photograph, they've got, who's in the picture or whatever. And it's always very small, right? Same idea. Focus your phone on that. Click on the camera. Use your fingers to open up. And suddenly now, even our aged eyes can read it easily, right? So a useful trick that uses pinch and spread, these two gestures, they call them, and your iPhone or your iPad. So really useful ideas, right? Okay. When you start your phone or your iPad, you get this well-known screen over here on the right, and it's got numbers on it that looks like a telephone, right? And that's the login screen. And Apple insists that you have a 4-digit PIN number, any 4 digits, 649813752901, anything that you will remember from, and that's purely a security feature, right? So if somebody else gets access to your phone or your iPad, or you leave it at the airport, or you leave it in a taxi or something, somebody who finds it can get access to your information, to your names and addresses and your photos and what have you. They can get access. So you can turn off the PIN so that you don't need it, but I don't recommend you do that, right? Now the iPhone and the iPad today, the later versions, you can also set it up, and we'll talk about that in the later section, to use Fingerprint, right? So all you have to do is put your finger on the home button, and you set it up so that it recognizes your fingerprint. The first time you do it takes a few minutes. You know, you let it see you. Say, I want this finger, and I want my thumb, and maybe my forefinger or my second finger, whatever. You can set it up with as many fingers as you like. It will then, to start it up, you just put your finger on the home button, and it'll open it up. But it's very secure, because now if you lose your device or you leave it somewhere, and I'm a nosy kind of guy, while you're out of the room, I want to see what you got on your phone. When I try and open it up, it won't open up because it doesn't recognize my fingerprint. It only recognizes your fingerprint.
Jeff, could I ask you a quick question?
Of course.
Unfortunately, I'm driving on the, and that what you just taught us and the other young lady about the folders inside a folder. Could you go over that quickly next week, just at the beginning?
Sure. Remind me.
Because that's new to me. I don't know how you did it.
I always revise every week of what we've done before, but remind me next week specifically, and we'll do it.
Let me ask you one more question about the pen, the 4-digit pin.
Right.
When you find.
Hello, Sharon? Oh, she must be going through a bad patch, bad signal. I she'll come back. We'll carry on.
ID in there.
So you'll have to repeat.
Not the pen, not the pen.
You'll have to repeat what you said. You blanked out for a while. Sharon? Hello? Okay.
Yeah. Yes.
Are you there?
Yes.
Okay. Ask your question again. You blanked out. I couldn't hear you.
I'm sorry. Can one email have more than one password that works with that one email?
Well, no, the PIN here is for the device, for the phone, not for the email. That's your PIN number to open the device. So until you key in the correct 4-digit code, your phone or your iPad won't start up, right? It won't allow you in.
Oh, okay, thank you.
See that? So that's got nothing to do with your email. This is purely for the device. And you can turn it off. I'm not even going to show you how to do that. I don't recommend it at all, right? Because it gives you some level of protection. Also, don't use a PIN number like 1111 or 1234 or anything like that, because that's kind of useless. Somebody else will guess it. Think of a 4-digit number that you will remember that I would never know, right? It could be some number, your phone number when you were growing up, or the 4 digits of the address you lived in, the last apartment you lived in, or whatever, something that you will remember, right? It's not great security, but it's very strong security once it's implemented. And don't forget the PIN. Even Apple cannot find it for you. So if you ever forget your PIN, you're out of luck, right? The only way you can get this device working again is they have to reset it to what they call factory specs, factory specifications. They got to clear it out and start it again, and you've lost everything that was there before, right? Even Apple cannot help you if you forget your PIN. So make sure you've got an easily remembered PIN. You can either some number that you remember or some pattern that you remember, right? You can look at a pattern. So let's say you wanted to go 1584, like in a sort of a diamond shape. Can you see that? 1584. That would be a possibility. Or some kind of a, say a triangle, 2789, right? Now don't use these ones that I'm suggesting, but something like that. So either the pattern of the numbers or a number that you easily remember, right? Could be that, don't use your social security number, for example. That's not a good idea. But you could use 4 digits of your social, last 4 digits, or something like that. Something that you will remember that I don't know, or anybody else doesn't know, nobody else knows, that protects your device, right? Too many times people have, left their devices behind, And if it doesn't have a pin, then it's a worthwhile device. If I find your iPhone lying around, it's worth absolutely nothing to me, right? Because I can't open it. So I might as well give it back to you. Whereas if it doesn't have a pin, it's my iPhone now, and I'm going to use it, or I'm going to sell it on eBay. You see, you get the idea. Okay, so we're getting near the end now. So let's just talk about one icon, which we use very, very seldom, right? And it's this icon here that looks like a sort of like a gear wheel, and they call it the settings button, the settings icon, setting. You'll see underneath it, it will say setting. Settings is a stupid name. It doesn't, you know, settings doesn't mean anything to me. What that button is you're talking to iOS. This is the one way, the only way that you can actually talk to Apple itself, to the operating system. And you say, I want to make some changes to my device. I don't want to make a phone call. I want to send an email. I want to change how this device works. And you would say, well, why the heck would I want to change how my device works? We'll see example. But in general, you don't do this very often. So on the iPad, you'll see that on the left, you've got all the settings. Yeah, it says settings, and you've got a whole laundry list of things. And then on the right, if you point at any one of these settings, the right will open up with more information. So in the picture that you see here, I'm pointing at the one that's highlighted is general, and over top here it says general, and then it's got some more stuff. So this is kind of like a menu, right? Menu, imagine in a Chinese restaurant. You've got all the things on the menu, and when you point at one, it tells you what's in the dish, so to speak, right? So you point at the item on the menu, and it says it's chicken, and it's got this in, and rice, and blah, 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 right? But if you point at something else, it tells you, no, that's not chicken, that's beef, and it hasn't got any rice, etc. You see that? So, but on the iPhone, it doesn't have enough space for all of this. So the iPhone will just show you the settings. And when you choose one of the settings, and the screen will change, and you'll see all this other stuff here, the details. So it works exactly the same, except that it doesn't have a lot of space on the iPhone. So there are dozens of things you can change here. I'm just going to talk about one or two of them for the moment, and we will come back to this again later. So airplane mode, you can turn airplane mode on or off. You know, they say when you're on a plane, you should put on airplane mode because it might affect the instruments of the pilot. And the way this works is, this is like a little switch. You see it says off, but it's got a little circle there. If you put your finger on the circle, you touch it and you drag it to the right, like a light switch. You drag it to the right, it will change color, and it'll be like this one down here. Can you see the one that says on in the bottom right-hand corner? And now it's on. To turn it off, you put your finger on a little white circle again and drag it to the left, and it'll turn it off. Airplane mode is a waste of time. Don't bother with it. It's always been a lot of nonsense. Your phone doesn't affect planes' electronics, and I don't know why they bother with it. The only other one I want to talk about is Wi-Fi. So let's talk about that for a minute or two, and then we can break, and I'll take questions, or we'll regroup next week. So Wi-Fi, this button here is when you need to connect to a new Wi-Fi. So let's say you come to my house. Now, you can't connect to your own Wi-Fi in your own apartment or your own house because you're too far away, right? Wi-Fi only extends over, you know, maybe 50 feet or 100 feet. So once you drive away more than, you know, 100 feet from your house or your apartment, your Wi-Fi is no longer seen by your phone or your iPad. So when you click on this button here, what it'll do is it'll open up a list of all the Wi-Fis that it can see. And it may see more than one Wi-Fi. So you're at my house now, you'll see my Wi-Fi. You may see the Wi-Fi of the guy next to me on the left. You may see the Wi-Fi of the guy across the road. You'll see a number of Wi-Fi. And all you do is you point at the one you want. So I'll tell you what my Wi-Fi is called. It's called Jeff's Wi-Fi or ABCDXYZ, whatever it's called. You point at it and it'll connect to that Wi-Fi. If it's a free Wi-Fi like you get at Starbucks or Atlanta Airport or at Benson, it will automatically connect, and that's that. If it's a Wi-Fi that is private and has a password, like at my house, you have to then, when you click on it, it says, a little window will open up and it says, what's the password? And you type in the password. If you've got the correct password, it connects to that Wi-Fi, and you never have to do this again. From now on, every time you come to my house or you go to the old Benson Center where we used to go, it'll recognize the Wi-Fi, it will remember the password, and it'll connect you in. So it's very useful. That button is extremely, extremely useful. I'll just mention two more buttons. There's this one here called notifications, and there's this one here called sounds. So notifications is every app that you put on your phone wants to talk to you. So when you get an email coming in, what happens? Bing. When you get a text coming in, what happens? Bong. And you can drive you mad. You know, all of these apps are going bing bong all day long. In notifications, you can turn them off, right? You can say the only one that I want a notification from is the phone. When the phone rings, I want to hear it, right? Other than that, shut up, right? And I turn most of them off. Or you can leave on your, that it sends you a notification when a text comes in, but nothing else. Most of these apps, they all automatically switch on notification. And this is using this here, you can turn them off. Sounds, this one below it here where it says sounds, is all the sounds that your device can make, that your phone can make. So you can change the ringtone. They've got about 40 different tunes for the ringtone. Or you can even you can go download from the internet your own sounds. I like downloading pieces of music. So when my phone plays music, I know the phone's ringing. Or you can just leave it on the standard ring. But you can also change all of the sounds, whatever sounds it makes, including the notification, you can change the sound. So instead of the notification just being bing, you could make it play, the first 10 notes of your favorite song or whatever. So those two are useful. Again, you don't do that very often. In fact, I've pretty much done the sounds once. I set it up the way I wanted and with my ringtone. Notifications are, if I add a new app, then I turn off the notification, but other than that, I don't need it. And Wi-Fi you will need quite often if you go to a different place. You want to connect to a Wi-Fi at my house or somebody else's place, or even in a place with a free Wi-Fi like a Starbucks, you must still tell it, connect to the Starbucks. It won't ask you for a password. If you come to my house, it will ask you for a password. And unless you know the password, you can't connect into my Wi-Fi. And ditto, if I come to your house, I can't connect to your Wi-Fi without a password. And again, I strongly recommend you have a password on your Wi-Fi and you have a PIN number on the device. The PIN keeping everybody out except you, and this allowing only people that you want to come onto your Wi-Fi. So freeloaders aren't, the guy next to you who's freeloading on your Wi-Fi can get it for free because you got to pay for it. Okay, any questions? I know it's been fairly quick. We'll revise everything next week and, go and look at these things that we spoke about today. And then you'll have more questions next week. Like I said, you can get yourself into trouble. If you start with the settings here and you can't remember what I said, what do? Hit the home button and you're back to home, right? Doesn't matter.
Oh, okay.
I don't know what the heck I'm doing. I can't remember what Jeff said. Hit the home button and you're out of here and then you're back to your home. Okay.
Well, I thank you so much, Jill.
Thank you.
Sure. My pleasure.
Yeah.
Thank you for being on, ladies.
Yeah. And it's good seeing you, Sharon.
Yeah, good seeing you too. You got us. Okay, there you are. I got you now.
This is social, right? Very social.
Yeah.
If you're screen sharing, Jeff, can you see us though? Can you see our faces if you're screen sharing?
Yeah, I can see you. I can see both of you. I can see you. So, make sure you're not in your PJs, right?
Yeah,
I can see you.
I need to know that. I need to know that bad.